From bad boy to bars Diddy's fall from grace. Sean Diddy Combs, the epitome of hip-hop opulence, now faces the stark reality of a concrete cell. Once a symbol of success and excess, Diddy's life was a testament to the heights of fame and fortune. His sprawling mansions, luxury cars, and high-profile relationships were the stuff of legend. Gone are the lavish parties, the private jets, and the entourage. The man who once commanded rooms with his presence now finds himself in a place where none of that matters. The glitz and glamour of his former life have been replaced by the stark, cold reality of incarceration. In their place, the deafening silence of confinement, the metallic clang of prison bars, and the ever-present gaze of surveillance cameras. The transition from a life of freedom to one of restriction is jarring, a constant reminder of the consequences of his actions. Arrested on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, Diddy's world has been turned upside down. The allegations are severe, painting a picture of a man who used his power and influence for nefarious purposes. The courtroom battles are intense, with every detail of his life scrutinized under the harsh light of the law. The man who once reigned over the music industry now navigates the unforgiving corridors of MDC Brooklyn, a stark reminder that even fame and fortune can't shield you from the long arm of the law. The prison, known for its harsh conditions, is a far cry from the luxurious environments Diddy once inhabited. The weight of these accusations hangs heavy, casting a long shadow over Diddy's legacy. The man who was once celebrated for his contributions to music and culture now faces a future that is anything but certain. The charges against him are not just legal battles, they are battles for his very soul. Once celebrated for his entrepreneurial spirit and musical genius, he now faces accusations that strike at the very core of his character. The accolades and achievements that once defined him are now overshadowed by the dark cloud of his alleged crimes. His business ventures, his music, his very identity are all under siege. The man who built an empire on confidence and charisma now confronts a future shrouded in uncertainty, his fate hanging precariously in the balance as the legal process unfolds. The courtroom drama is a stark contrast to the stages and boardrooms where he once thrived. Each day brings new challenges, new revelations, and the ever-present question, what will become of Sean Diddy Combs? Public opinion is divided. Some fans stand by him, believing in his innocence and hoping for his redemption. Others are quick to condemn, seeing the charges as a confirmation of long-held suspicions. The media frenzy adds fuel to the fire, with every new development making headlines and sparking debates. Amidst all this, Diddy's personal life is also in turmoil. Family and friends grapple with the reality of his situation, visiting him in the sterile environment of the prison visitation room. The emotional toll is immense, as they try to reconcile the man they know with the accusations he faces. In the confines of his cell, Diddy has time to reflect. Reports suggest he spends his days reading, writing, and contemplating the choices that led him here. It's a far cry from the fast-paced life he once led, but it's a chance for introspection and perhaps redemption. As the legal proceedings continue, the world watches with bated breath. The final verdict will not only determine Diddy's fate, but will also send ripples through the music industry and beyond. It's a story of rise and fall, of power and consequence, and of a man who once had it all, now facing the fight of his life. Inside MDC Brooklyn, a glimpse into pure hell. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, known as MDC Brooklyn, stands as a stark symbol of America's troubled prison system. This facility, often shrouded in controversy, has been the subject of numerous reports and investigations over the years. This imposing structure, a concrete monolith against the New York skyline, houses over 1,000 inmates, many of whom claim it's a living nightmare. The stories that emerge from within these walls are harrowing, painting a picture of despair and neglect. Former inmates describe a facility riddled with problems, from overcrowding and violence to inadequate health care and deplorable living conditions. The cells are often cramped, with multiple inmates sharing spaces designed for far fewer people.
It's pure hell, says Michael, a former inmate who spent 2 years at MDC. He recounts the daily struggles of living in such an environment where every day feels like a battle for survival. The air is thick with the stench of sweat, urine, and fear. The ventilation is poor, making it difficult to breathe, especially during the hot summer months. The food is inedible and violence is a constant threat. Inmates often go hungry, unable to stomach the poorly prepared meals. Fights break out frequently and the guards are often slow to intervene.
Another former inmate, Sarah, echoes these sentiments, sharing her own harrowing experiences. She talks about the lack of basic hygiene products and the constant fear of assault, describing MDC as a place where hope goes to die. She recalls the overwhelming sense of hopelessness that pervades the facility, making it difficult for inmates to see any light at the end of the tunnel.
These first-hand accounts paint a grim picture of life inside MDC, highlighting the urgent need for reform. The conditions described by Michael and Sarah are not isolated incidents but rather indicative of systemic issues within the facility, raising serious questions about the facility's ability to provide even the most basic standards of living. The stories from MDC Brooklyn serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of a broken prison system and the urgent need for change. As we delve deeper into the lives of those who have endured the harsh realities of MDC Brooklyn, it becomes clear that the issues within this facility are a microcosm of larger problems plaguing the American prison system. The voices of the inmates, often silenced and ignored, demand to be heard. Their stories are a call to action, urging us to confront the injustices and work towards a system that upholds the dignity and rights of every individual, regardless of their circumstances. The journey through pure hell is not just a glimpse into the lives of those behind bars, but a reflection on our society's values and the changes needed to create a more just and humane world. Rats, roaches, and fear. Ex-inmates detail MDC's horrors. The stories that emerge from MDC's walls are enough to make your skin crawl. The Metropolitan Detention Center, or MDC, has long been criticized for its inhumane conditions, but the first-hand accounts from former inmates paint an even grimmer picture. Ex-inmates recount horrifying tales of rodent infestation so severe that rats scurry across cell floors in broad daylight. Cockroaches, they say, are constant companions, infesting food, bedding, and even personal belongings. The sheer number of these pests is overwhelming, making it impossible to find any respite from their presence.
"I've seen roaches bigger than my thumb," says David, a former inmate who served time for drug possession. "They were everywhere. You couldn't escape them. They'd crawl on you while you slept and you'd find them in your food. It was like living in a nightmare that you couldn't wake up from."
Beyond the vermin, the lack of basic hygiene is appalling. Former inmates describe toilets that overflow for days, mold creeping up cell walls, and a constant shortage of soap and cleaning supplies. The stench from the overflowing toilets is unbearable, and the mold poses serious health risks, exacerbating respiratory issues and other illnesses.
"It's filthy," says Maria, who spent a year at MDC for credit card fraud. "You feel like you're constantly covered in grime. It's dehumanizing. The lack of basic hygiene products means that you can't even clean yourself properly, leaving you feeling dirty and degraded all the time."
These conditions, they say, create a breeding ground for disease and despair, turning a prison sentence into a torturous ordeal. The lack of proper sanitation and the constant presence of pests make it difficult to maintain any sense of dignity or hope. Inmates are left to suffer in silence, their pleas for help often ignored by the authorities. The psychological toll of living in such conditions is immense. Many former inmates report experiencing severe anxiety, depression, and even PTSD as a result of their time at MDC. The constant fear of being bitten by a rat or finding a cockroach in your food creates a state of perpetual stress and paranoia. The stories from MDC are a stark reminder of the urgent need for prison reform. The inhumane conditions not only violate basic human rights but also hinder any chance of rehabilitation. Instead of serving as a place for correction and growth, MDC becomes a breeding ground for further trauma and suffering, Advocacy groups and former inmates are calling for immediate action to address the dire conditions at MDC. They demand better sanitation, pest control, and access to basic hygiene products. The fight for prison reform is not just about improving conditions, it's about restoring humanity and dignity to those who are incarcerated. As the stories of MDC's horrors continue to surface, the call for change grows louder. It's time to listen to the voices of those who have suffered and take meaningful steps to ensure that no one has to endure such inhumane conditions again. The fight for justice and reform is far from over, but with continued advocacy and awareness, there is hope for a better future for all inmates. Section 4. Diddy behind bars, isolation, fear, and special treatment. Diddy's experience within MDC's walls remains shrouded in secrecy. Sources suggest he's held in protective custody, isolated from the general population for his own safety. This isolation, while intended to protect him, likely exacerbates the psychological toll of confinement. The man accustomed to constant social interaction now faces endless hours alone with his thoughts, the weight of his legal troubles pressing down on him. Rumors swirl about Diddy's mental state. Some reports suggest he's struggling to cope with the harsh reality of prison life, experiencing panic attacks and bouts of insomnia. Others claim he's maintaining his composure, focusing on his legal defense and clinging to the hope of exoneration. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in between. What's clear is that Diddy's life behind bars is a far cry from the luxurious existence he once knew. Section 5. A System in Crisis, MDC's Long History of Neglect. MDC Brooklyn's problems run far deeper than Diddy's individual experience. The facility has faced decades of scrutiny for its inhumane conditions and systemic failures. Judges have condemned its lack of adequate medical care, citing instances where inmates suffered needlessly due to negligence. Overcrowding remains a persistent issue, with inmates often crammed into cells designed for far fewer people.
MDC is a ticking time bomb. The conditions are ripe for violence, disease, and despair. It's not a matter of if something terrible will happen, but when.
Her words underscore the urgent need for reform within MDC and the broader prison system. Until these systemic issues are addressed, MDC will continue to be a stain on the American justice system.